September the 11th, 2023, in our council chambers and by video conference. I wanted to mention that Mayor Hamlin has unexpectedly had to provide her regrets. She may be able to join us during the meeting, but we will be carrying on in without her. I also wanted, as we're starting, to say welcome to those in the gallery, as well as the viewing audience. Also, we want to commend our Deputy Clerk Dahl and the team of staff that have been working very diligently over these past few weeks, because we've done a major audiovisual rehaul in the chambers here, and where this will be our inaugural meeting of working with the new system, and I'm sure we'll move along fine, but it'll be because it is training counselors now to do something audiovisually, and that's a challenge on my part. I know that. So again, our accommodations to the staff for their hard work in that regard. So I wanted to call the meeting to order, and then we will begin with the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Doherty will be taking us through that.
For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. Anishinaabek, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who were families, friends, and communities the way we are today. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and the relationship it establishes with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history and the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community. We seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better and to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation.
A motion to adopt the agenda, and the motion reads that the content of the council agenda for September 11th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Ring. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. I'll ask if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest at this time. Doesn't appear to be. Certainly, if you become aware of one as we're going through the meeting, you can just let us know. Thank you. We'll now move to item 4 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes. And the special meeting of council held July 31st, 2023, that the minutes of the special council meeting held July 31st, 2023 be accepted as presented. And as noted, those are the special council meeting minutes from July 31st, 2023. So do I have a mover, Councillor Baines, and a seconder, Councillor Doherty? And again, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. So I'll move into community announcements. Again, we mentioned about Mayor Hamlin having to send her regrets. Today is the something we'll hear about later in the community of the whole meeting, is the fact that today is National and Provincial Day of Service, in memoriam of tragedy from September 11th, 2001, but also to help provide a positive focus to a tragic date. I just wanted to start out by recognizing that today is that day. And I'll move over to Councillor Jeffrey and ask if there's community announcements she'd like to bring forward.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. It's been a very busy time for all of us, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail except to perhaps highlight some of the things that I've attended. The 30th anniversary for Fleetwood Dance, a 50th anniversary La Moda Unisex Salon. Today I had the pleasure of presenting the paddle, catching up to them after their celebration. Friday night, it was my pleasure to drop the puck on behalf of Mayor Hamlin at the Blues opener. It was an exciting game. It was a 9-3 win, and our new team is just as talented, maybe even faster than last year's team. So there's going to be a lot of hockey entertainment over the season. It was a pleasure to attend with Director Culver and Manager Martin at the council booth on Saturday, and had a wonderful 25th anniversary celebration with the Blue Mountain Special Olympic Alpine team. And then finally yesterday, just a wonderful bench dedication by the Simcoe County Suicide Awareness Group at Sunset Point Park. And you can check that seat out directly south of the Chipper across the road. So it's been busy, but it's been a lot of really great stuff. So thank you.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have no specific announcements, but I do generally want to say what a terrific summer it was in the town of Collingwood. There's so much animation down at the waterfront, downtown. The number of people that came out to the market, number of people that we were able to speak to from the town of Collingwood booth at the market, all was just a tremendously positive experience. And so I thank staff and I thank our community for their support. Thank you.
Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Fryer. I have a couple announcements. Number one, I spoke yesterday and attended the Simcoe County Suicide Awareness and for the bench dedication at Sunset Point Park. It was an extremely moving day, talking, listening to individual stories and kind of meeting the council themselves. And I just want to put out to the community as we struggle through the next, as day to day comes, it's okay to speak out and speak up and ask for help. And together we will do our best to conquer the suicide, and it's an important topic, and to never be afraid to ask for help. Number two, I feel that it's important that myself, and I want council to recognize the Mobile Soup Kitchen. They were just featured on CTV News on Friday evening, and a big shout out currently Rhonda Day, Jay Smith, and Holly McElroy Holmes. This group currently is working under the Hope Chapel on Cameron Street. They're delivering 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. They're currently feeding 70 individuals both days, and they also are building 27 hampers that they feed 2 days a week to families and individuals in the community. It's just remarkable how many volunteers. They're up to 40 full-time volunteers now. Each day requires 12 to 15 volunteers per session, and the support there is just amazing. And the Butterfly Pantry has now moved from the youth center to the Church of Nazarene on 200 Ontario Street. Or Erie Street, sorry. And so that's where now, if there's members in the community that need to access the pantry, it's there for them. The community is extremely proud of this group. And I think that as we go through, again, the challenging economical times and things that we're facing, again, reach out, the support's there, the help's there, and together we can make a difference. Thanks.
Very good message, and I think you did a very good job with the microphone there. Councillor Ring.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I as well attended a few of the events that have already been mentioned, so I won't touch on them, but there has been a real busy, especially this last weekend. I think I was at 3 different events on Saturday alone. But anyways, one that kind of near and dear to my heart, being a former employee of the Collingwood Shipyards, it was my honor to attend the Collingwood Museum's 7th annual Shipyard Social. This annual celebration has become the museum's flagship event, which honors and acknowledges the many men and women who worked in the Collingwood Shipyards prior to its closing on September 12, 1986. This year, the museum staff expanded the event to 2 days, which began on Friday, September the 8th, with the Shipyard Social kickoff at the Side Launch Brewery. On Saturday, September 9th, the popular Hard Hats on Here Ontario March, of which former shipyard employees and community members marched from the town hall to the Collingwood Museum. This event concluded on the museum grounds with a social gathering and the taking of the annual group photo of all the participating former shipyard workers. Again, the museum staff, we should be commended for hosting such a first-class event, which meant so much to many of our community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Following up on Councillor Ring's point about the hospitality, if you will, of the museum and the hard work. I'd like to give a shout out to them for their upcoming Sunset Cruise on Wednesday, September the 20th. And the reason I'm telling you now is that the tickets for this on a Huronic are selling out very quickly. So for $35, the boat leaves at 6:15, gets back at 8 for a lovely sunset cruise. You can help the museum and help your community by purchasing a ticket. If you're already a member, which I am, and I hope many of our citizens join the museum in supporting it as well, it's only $25 plus HST. So get your tickets while you can. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pryor. I almost said him. Again, there were a lot of events, particularly the Special Olympics dinner on Saturday night was just a fantastic and inspirational evening. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And as far as the bench dedication yesterday, Councillor Potts did a great reading, very inspiring, very emotional part of the day, but quite a good group they've got there and lots of support. Anyway, on to the library announcements. This September is Library Card Sign-Up Month. Every September, we encourage residents to sign up for a library card, and we celebrate those who already have one. This month, you'll be entered into a draw for signing up for a library card, or existing members can complete a book review for every book they read. The grand prize is to be moved to the top of the queue for all your holds in 2024. The library is also gearing up for its annual big book sale next month. They're accepting book donations every Wednesday in September during regular hours. Donations can be dropped off at the public service desk. And lastly, in honor of Collingwood Fashion Week, join us at the library for So Cute, Zodiac Edition on September 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. Participants will bring a clothing item of their own. This can be a t-shirt, sweater, jeans, jacket, and can decorate the item with their own personal zodiac sign and other astrology-related images. Participants will learn basic embroidery, stitches, and patterns while enhancing their wardrobe. Registration is required, and this evening is geared toward youth and adults ages 13 plus. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of items, and I wanted to begin with noting about the formal community engagement process that is underway this month. It is in conjunction with the more informal steps that have been underway over the past few months. Through the summer, many hours have been put in by council members assisting staff with information booths at the farmers market and during side launch days. There have been many comments of appreciation from residents and visitors too, who have taken advantage of the opportunity to direct questions our way. Now staff and council are collecting specific comments from the community about their further thoughts on engagement. This can be done online through our Engage page, or tomorrow night, there is a face-to-face public meeting at the Pavilion at Sunset Point. So just off St. Lawrence Street beside the volleyball courts, we encourage residents to bike or walk over to join us from 7 to 8. We would really appreciate getting your input as we form our community engagement action plan. The next I wanted to mention was Thursday, September 28th, the Living Better with Parkinson's nonprofit foundation is holding their major fundraising golf day event at Duntruan Highlands. The funds raised are used to support ongoing educational and physical activity programs to people living with Parkinson's disease in the South Georgian Bay area. Information can be obtained at livingbetterwithparkinsons.ca website in regards to the event. And I also pass on my kudos to staff over these past few weeks for all the events that we've had that were just tremendously well run and successful. And I will leave off with hope to see everyone next Friday at the Great Northern Exhibition. It's next weekend, and there's nothing like a fall fair to bring a community together. So those are what we have for today. Moving on the agenda is item 6, and that's deputations. And today we have joining us Kelly Donovan, and she's from Fit for Duty, and she's come to address us today and the members of the viewing audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And good afternoon to council members, staff, and anybody watching at home. I don't have a presentation. I was just hoping to come here and have a very informal discussion about the current whistleblower program. But I first of all just wanted to congratulate everyone in the room that participated in the creation of that first policy, because it is an extremely courageous step to take as a municipality in Ontario. As you know, our federal and provincial governments don't see benefit in broad whistleblower protection laws. So it's up to us to take the proactive steps to provide that level of protection. So first of all, like I said, I wanted to give kudos. Second of all, I wanted to point to something that was said. I believe it was Councillor Jeffrey that early on said, you know, should we be worried about the involvement of senior staff in these types of programs? Because historically, the major issues that could have benefited from such a program involved senior staff. So it was already noted that that could be a problem. And I believe at the time it was discounted as, you know, it's going to be cost prohibitive. But in the last year, 2 years, I've really been on a campaign to get out and let municipalities know that there are affordable options. That's why I proactively reached out to members of council this past summer, because with my corporation, I just started working with Wasaga Beach on their whistleblower program as well. So if we talk about that issue of the senior staff being involved, that's where I wanted to share with you my story so that everybody here could understand a bit more of, you know, what's involved in a disclosure made about senior staff. So if you go back to 2016, I was a police constable with the Waterloo Regional Police Service. I showed great promise. I was promoted to be a use of force instructor after 4 years. So I knew I had a good career in law enforcement. But in around my 5th year, which was 2016, I really started to take issue with the way my service was investigating their own members who were accused of domestic violence. I had witnessed enough cases to know that it wasn't being done properly, and I had a real issue with that. So when we think back to those staff members who are witnessing something they know is wrong, I had that feeling in my gut that I knew something had to change. And at that time, our laws actually prohibited a disclosure from a police officer. So I was legally prohibited from coming forward. And I looked at different mechanisms that would allow me to raise this issue, but there were none. So in 2016, what I did was make a lawful delegation just like this one to the Police Services Board. And I disclosed to the board what I knew and why I believed it was wrong. And the result of that delegation was just immediate reprisal. The person that I had reported, which was the chief of police, took reprisal against me, put me under investigation, took me out of my job. I was actually prohibited from communicating with members of the board. So the communication that I had tried to establish was cut off. But my story illustrates, you know, that obviously there's a reprisal to a whistleblower of professional repercussions, but that's not where it ends. So 14 years after this reprisal, I resigned from policing. I wanted to start my own corporation and start fresh, but I couldn't leave the reprisal behind. So about 7 months later, because I was out in the community sharing my story and advocating for better whistleblower protections, the police service continued to reprise against me. So we are 6 years beyond my resignation. We're still in litigation. The police service is still litigating against me, and they've spent over $635,000 of taxpayer money to continue to do it. So when you talk about whistleblower protections, I share my story, and I feel that I'm the best person suited to help municipalities like yourselves because I've been there and I'm still there. And I do truly understand the risk when you decide to speak out against someone who is in an extremely powerful position, because the reprisal doesn't end with the career. And if you relate my story to a small town like Collingwood, you know, on the grand scheme of things, it's still a small town. The reprisal goes beyond someone's profession because there are many people in the community with lots of connections. And any staff member that thinks about making a disclosure has to think about what happens even after I quit, right? Because that's what I learned was it doesn't end when you quit. Depending on the disclosure and depending on the person, the risk of reprisal is in some cases so tremendous that you're just suppressing that disclosure. So I'm obviously sharing that story with you because that's the worst case scenario that you could see in our country when it comes to whistleblower protection. But if we relate that back to the policy, I do want to stress the importance of not having staff involved in the process. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So what we do with Wasaga Beach is the complaints are basically triaged by the independent third party. The complaint might get sent back to the town to investigate themselves, but the process is being overseen by an independent third party. So that's the benefit, is it's not having to hire a new person that's going to do this. It's contracting it out so that if no complaints come in, there's really no cost to the town. It works on it's a retainer basis where if everybody behaves and everyone trusts the system and no complaints come in, it's very affordable. But again, even when a complaint comes in, it's not the independent third party that runs with it and just keeps invoicing back to the town. It would go back to the town to investigate. They would just oversee the process. So it's what you have now, and it's just adding one little person into the mix, and that's that independent third party that can just ensure that there aren't relationships that are biasing the entire process. Because even when it's subconscious, we all have relationships with people we work with. And if you're appointed to investigate them, it's impossible to be completely independent and impartial. There's just too many relationships at play. So I was hoping to come here, share that with you, see if there were any questions. Like I said, when I left policing, my goal was to do this, was to offer independent whistleblower program administration. It's taken me some time. I've done a lot of policy writing and consulting, but we're at a stage now where municipalities understand the value and they're taking that proactive step. And it's important. I think every municipality across the province should do it. But I chose to get into this line of work because I don't think anybody right now is really offering this. But again, I also feel that I'm the best person to be in this position because, I understand how hard it is for that whistleblower to come forward with that disclosure in the first place and what they truly do risk. So thank you for your time. But if there are any questions.
Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking to us about your initiative. And I will look to council if there's any questions or comments. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Ms. Donovan, I'm, as a newbie councillor, unaware of what our procedure is in regard to this. And I've been a mediator for 23 years, so process is important, and I would certainly like to take a look at it. But as per your presentation, you seem to be implying that there's room for, in your opinion, revision perhaps, or updating of our whistleblower procedure?
Yes, and I'm not familiar with the actual policy. I'm just referring to the policy that was presented to council in 2021. So if it's been revised since then, I wouldn't know the revisions. But I think where it comes to the whistleblower deciding who should investigate their complaint, so I believe right now it's the whistleblower can decide which director should get their complaint and look into it. But I think even allowing the choice is still allowing some form of bias. Mm-hmm. So even if that whistleblower has trust in a director and says, I think they'll do a good job, they still don't know the relationships at play. There's still an opportunity that bias could influence the outcome. And just having an independent person that can work with the whistleblower and help maintain their anonymity. They don't have to disclose that to the town. And, if the whistleblower wants to remain anonymous, they do. But that independent person can look through the facts, take a look at the evidence, and then have those discussions with the whistleblower. Who do you think should look into this, and why do you think that? And then the whistleblower, it's just another added level of independence where they can then direct it back to the town, to the right person, but also oversee the process. So if the complaint came back and they said, well, we looked into it, but there's nothing to it, the whistleblower will say, well, did you look at this evidence? Did you talk to these witnesses that were identified? So you've got somebody overseeing the process without having to pay an external investigator with every single complaint.
Thank you for your comments. I will review this 2011, did you say, or
19?
At any rate, I'll review this and reflect your comments upon that. So thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, we appreciate the delegation and informing us of the service and such. Anyone else wishing? Councillor Potts.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan, I just want to, I appreciate the deputation today. Obviously, this topic is near and dear to my heart, and I think it's important. And I just in that line of work and different issues that arise day to day in workplaces, and that I think it's something that I'm really interested in learning more about. And I want to thank you for reaching out and communicating. It was a very quick discussion that we had to come and have a deputation and following the lobbyist registry. I think it really shows that I think there might be an interest to have a look at what our policy is, maybe something that we can improve on. But I just want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else. So again, I'll pass on our appreciation for coming before us today and commend you for your efforts.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Have a great day. Okay, and we'll move on to item 7, which is recurring updates. And I believe it would be CAO Skinner that will be speaking to the items. So I will turn the chair to her.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There should be a brief deck that this will be the first time I've seen it come up. I think it'll come up on our screens as well as the large screen. Thank you. It is up now. And I'll just make a brief comment on the whistleblower piece. I was asked in 2022 to make a presentation to the municipal CAOs group and about our judicial inquiry and the recommendations. And my closing slide was my advice to all CAOs that the one thing I took away from that is that they should make sure that they have whistleblower provisions in place, because that might have been something that could have cut off a lot of things that had happened in Collingwood or had them examined up front. So thank you to the delegation as well. Back to the water capacity and land use planning policy update. This one has a little different title than the last time you heard this, and it's been called the final update. And the reason that it's noted as the final update is because the resolution that created these monthly updates and adjusted it partway through, it noted that the updates would continue until such time as the interim control bylaw was lifted. So we'll get to in a moment, but we're really, really pleased that our interim control bylaw has been lifted. And hopefully with the tender opening tomorrow, we'll be moving on to a very different stage in our water capacity planning that will bring with it its own set of updates. Next slide, please. So I just gave you the punchline. As I hope all the public are aware, our interim control bylaw was ceased to be in effect. It's now gone as of July 19th. It's a time-limited tool under the Planning Act. Would have been done in 2022, but there were 3 appeals to the zoning, the statement in the zoning bylaw. They've all been resolved. There was no decision point for council upon their resolution under the legislation. It is simply lifted. Very positive for the community. We have our servicing capacity allocation policy, fondly called the SCAP, and that shows how we will do and council will do a responsible and transparent allocation of our servicing capacity to new developments and infill developments for that matter, including those that that allow water to be and wastewater to be allocated using the community's values. Next slide. After the ICBL, planning applications for major developments are processed, and we did the first batch review of major developments under the merit-based system earlier this year, and our second batch is targeting the fall of 2023. So that allocates the water that has been targeted for this year. Most minor development proposals are exempt from the SCAP. So if you're doing an infill housing, rebuilds, there's a number of different things that you can do that are exempted from the SCAP. And those with ICBL exemptions will be contracted directly by staff. and your projects can proceed. However, if you're within the regulated area of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority or the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, you should reach out to them early in the process, as they have their own regulatory authority. It's not a part of the town's authority and is related to the protection of people and property from water, flooding, wave uprush, unstable slopes, and the like. Next slide, please. Previously exempted projects, the percentage of capacity by building permit status, you'll see that they're the most important part on this slide in the red letters and in the 35% on the right side of the pie chart, which has no application. If you have an ICBL exemption, you'll be contacted about your next steps to move to a building permit, or you could reach out to planning services. ICBL exemptions will expire, and if you intend to move to a building permit, it would behoove you to do so as soon as practical. There may be some people who are deciding not to move forward for very legitimate reasons. And if so, and after proper notice, that water can be repurposed to others who are moving forward. So we like to do that with appropriate notice to everyone involved, and per the policies decided on by council. Next step, slide. Water capacity updates. Most importantly here, we do every 6 months provide an update on the uncommitted hydraulic reserve capacity to council. So that's coming up later this month. And that's really a lot of technical words to say how much water's been used, what the results are in the plant, and therefore how much we do have going forward and how it can be allocated through the remainder of this year and into next year and the years until we get our plant expansion. We are continuing conversations with staff at the town of the Blue Mountains around their water supply, the portion of their water supply that comes from us, what's going on with their environmental assessment. And one of the most important things they're interested in the short term is the results from the tender that will be known in the next day or so. In the water treatment plant expansion at the existing plant, we have Canadian has UV equipment on site and installed. We've been having quite a few challenges with the commissioning. It was delayed due to labor resource issues with Denora, who's the specialty supplier. We are targeting the commissioning of this equipment in September and October and are taking increasingly strong steps with this supplier to make sure that we get the attention that is needed to get this equipment online prior to the cooler water coming through early this winter. We have been on this and had expected it to be ready before the cool water a year ago. So this is somewhat frustrating to staff who've had to focus on this through the summer. With respect to the very large expansion that we've been collaborating on with New Tecumseh as a funder and recipient of a portion of the water. The constructability review and general contractor meetings have been held. They have had some emerging concerns with respect to the ability to deliver by the early 2026 date. However, the proof is going to be in the pudding with respect to the dates that come out in the bids. We have done everything that we can with those general contractors to make sure that it's well understood how the construction can work and the various steps that need to be taken. I like to think a little bit of this joke about how people who are doing open heart surgery do it while the heart is still pumping. And this is a little bit like that, in that Director Slama and her staff need to keep the water flowing through town to New Tecumseh, town of the Blue Mountains, and others while the expansion is being put into place. So there's a number of steps to move things back and forth and keep that very high quality water flowing. The tender will close tomorrow. It must have been a while since I've done a presentation to council because I'm stumbling on my words a little. Next slide, please. Well, this one is the schedule. And I have to say that when we started this some time ago, the idea that we would finish it almost on time, very close to on time, and largely have done so. We'll wait to see when the water actually flows, but the intentions to get the tender out the door and for it to be a high quality tender, I believe, have been largely achieved. You can see here what used to be a gray chart has turned almost into a dark blue chart if your color perception is good. The most important thing is that this time is the second box from the top right, the final design and facility construction tender, which is intended to close in August. We've ended up with a 1-month extension of that tender until tomorrow, the 12th, based on the bidders' communication with us that in order to do a high quality bid, they needed some extra time. So that was allowed until tomorrow. Next slide, please. Thank you. And I did mean to mention one other item, which is that staff have been looking at interim capacity in the plant itself, how to, there were some discussions with council some time ago about options for interim capacity. So they have been looking at, once the UV is installed, whether there's options to go above 31,000-ish megaliters per day to something slightly higher than that, using some of the suggestions both from staff and also, I would like to say, from some of our local engineering consultants who had helped us early in this process. Thank you.
Would anyone from council have any questions of the CEO in regards to the update? Okay, so we'll move on to item 7.2, the MZO update.
Thank you, Chair. And our Director Valentine is prepared to provide that update for you today.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and CEO Skinner. So by way of update respecting the Minister's zoning order intended to facilitate the Poplar Regional Health and Wellness Village proposal, we're at the stage where both the town and the proponents have reached consensus on the appropriate content for the companion development agreement, which you'll recall is intended to primarily secure the pro-offered community benefits and to outline an overarching land use planning process for the lands. The agreement content does include the incorporation of the final negotiation points that resulted from Council's most recent in-camera direction, and the town has also received the majority of the funds that cover the outstanding third-party costs, which are primarily related to legal and consulting fees. Pending the final payment of the third-party invoice that remains, the next step would be for both parties to execute the agreement. In the meantime, the proponents are participating in the official plan review as it relates to providing comments on draft 2, which Council will recall was released for discussion purposes at the end of July, and we are targeting statutory engagement touch points for early to mid-November. Staff and the official plan review consultants certainly welcome this feedback and similar feedback from all stakeholders where draft 2 policies might impact their areas of interest. And we will be working with the proponents of the Wellness Village as we move towards a final draft of the official plan, which would be intended to be brought forward to this council for adoption by the end of this year. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the update for today.
Thank you very much. I will again ask if there's any council members who have additional questions. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8, which is reports and minutes of other committees and boards. And there are none. Item 9, Committee of the Whole report. And so 9.1 is Committee of the Whole report from July 24th, 2023, and it's the remaining items. 9.1.1, that Council received the Committee of the Whole report from its meeting held July 24th, 2023, and hereby approved the recommendations pertaining to the staff reports listed below and as contained within the report as presented. And it's CCS 2023-03, the Customer Service Standards Policy, and it includes the Committee of the Whole 2023 minutes, as well as the policy itself. So I would first ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the table. moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Baines. And is there any discussion? I don't believe there's any need for presentation because this has already been handled at the committee of the whole level. So it would just be if there's any further thing that a council member wanted to address. You go ahead, Councillor Baines.
It is perhaps a trivial and perhaps an amusing question, but I understand fax and mail or mail and fax. Does the customer service department actually receive anything by fax these days? I have a fax machine and use it regularly. I have to in my business, but I'm interested to know whether the town of Collingwood get any faxes anymore.
I guess I would turn that question to Clerk Thomas.
Actually, I can put it over to our executive director. However, I can clearly answer it. We do. I regularly witness it. There is some actually legal documents that won't require electronic email transmission. So we do require a fax similarly for that, and we do get the odd inquiry as well as legal correspondence.
Very difficult to hack a fax. Thank you for that. No further questions.
Thank you. Nothing further, then we will call the matter to vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Moving on to staff reports, 9.2.1, and I am going to sever this particular item, severing off the third and that, because I would like to propose an amendment to it. And I will turn the chair to Councillor Jeffrey when I'm prepared to bring that forward. So I will read it all into record and have a mover and seconder put it on the table, and then I will request a severing. Yes. So C 2023-19, consideration of additional advisory committees and council representation on advisory committees. That staff report C 2023-19, consideration of 1, additional advisory committees, and 2, council representation on advisory committees be received. And that council delegate staff to appropriately integrate environment, climate change, and sustainability considerations into the terms of reference of advisory committees and task force established by council. 3, and that the mayor as chief executive officer and deputy mayor in their capacity pursuant to the Municipal Act and procedural bylaw be requested to participate in the annual meeting between the auditor and key staff to review the audited financial statements in detail before being presented to the committee of the whole and then to council. And that the procedural bylaw be amended to permit any member of council to participate as an ex officio member of any advisory committee. So I will ask for a mover and seconder of that motion. Moved by Councillor Ring and seconded by Councillor Potts. And I will then ask to sever the item. And I can proceed with the first 3 or the other 3. So I would open the floor and ask if there's anybody who wants to comment on those. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Really just an interest or procedural question, noting that the ones that are brought up here were not unanimous in the past. We've seen what the vote was as a kind of refamiliarization as to how close the vote was, and I don't see those here. So is it our intention going forward not to have those votes present, or it's just a bit of a hiccup after summer?
I'll turn that to Clerk Thomas.
It could be a bit of a hiccup. However, unless it was a recorded vote, it technically doesn't fall on the official record, but it can go on to our record keeping that we do for vote checking. But if that's something that council would like to see, we could. I believe this one was actually 4-4.
I was just going to add I believe the only item that had the reason that there was a defeated amendments, there was amendments attempted in regards to that. And the vote on the particular one I brought forward was 404. The vote by Mayor Hamlin's amendment, I don't believe was 4-4. I think it was 6-2. But that was the other one that had been put forward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So for moving forward, I guess, how do we make that request? I think they've always been there in the past. I really appreciate having them as to remind me as to how it went. If we can add it, or I don't have to do anything formal. Okay, thank you.
That I've included. I think it doesn't help that we've been 5 weeks off too. That's part of it. And in fact, I think that vote would be 6 weeks now. So, so on the, Councillor Doherty, go right ahead.
Sorry, Mayor, wrong card. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that I am in support of all three elements of this motion. The original proposal to create a climate action committee that would include members of council and the public as a separate committee. The original recommendation coming back from staff was not really exactly what I anticipated. I figured it would be a no-brainer, but I do understand now the considerations of having to pull in and out different departments, and also the opinion of Collingwood Climate Action Team that have been associated with our climate change specialist, that they would prefer to retain some element of independence from these processes, and it allows them to be more objective in their comments back to staff and council. So for those reasons, I do support that one. And the amendment to add members of council to the various committees of council, also not exactly as I had originally anticipated, but I do again understand the rationale. I think that the objective is satisfied by allowing members of council to be ex officio members of the committees. The middle recommendation I had no issue with from the start. So just to explain my support, but also the fact that I guess originally I wasn't supporting. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to those? Then I will call that to vote. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Baines, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would echo and agree with Councillor Doherty's comments. I would just say in regard to the last point, which you're severing anyway, in regard to any member of council being an ex officio member of any advisory group.
If I may, Councillor Baines, I'm severing one prior to that.
My comments to then. Sorry.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're just dealing with the other three? Yeah, okay. Councillor Ring.
We're dealing with the other three as a group. The only one that's severed is the one that you want to sever.
The third and that, yes.
The third, as they're listed here.
It's severed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, so we'll call that to vote then. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And I will turn the chair to Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so I believe you have an amendment you'd like to consider. So if you give us that wording, that would be terrific.
Yeah, we already did speak about the fact that it was a defeated vote when I asked for the amendment I put forward. I'm actually going to change the amendment I put forward a little bit. What I'd propose is the way it reads is fine. I'd like to add that if there is interest by members of council, up to 2, they be allowed to attend the meeting as well. And if it turned out that there was more interest and it was 3 or more people, then council would have to make a decision. But if not, then it would just be something that that staff and could proceed with in planning the meeting. So I think the reading of it would just be that, if up to 2 members of council, if interested in participating. And so I'd be putting that on the floor, and I'd be asking for a seconder.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So that's up to an additional 2 members above and beyond. All right, do we have a seconder? I'll get a seconder first, please. Councillor Ring, seconded. Councillor Baines.
Thank you. There are a few bumps here. A member plus 2 other members of council, so the potential of 3 ex officio members of a advisory committee, or that's through to the deputy mayor, I would just put.
Yeah. Okay, so my understanding is mayor, a deputy mayor, and 2 additional. I just wanted to clarify that it's additional above and beyond the mayor and the deputy mayor.
For any advisory committee?
No, this is specific to the financial audit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Meeting with the external auditor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Councillor Doherty.
I wanted to understand the rationale for I'm so bad.
To understand the rationale for adding the option of 2 more members of council, just because it starts to get so close to the size of a committee of the whole meeting that it may as well be such.
Thinking of this in future and other councils, it was a case of we're establishing that the mayor and deputy mayor will meet, but there may be interest within the councillors that somebody would feel like they wanted to attend. So it was just to give the opportunity if they so desired. In the informal step that we took this past meeting or this past year with the external auditor, when I attended and the mayor attended, the offer was made at that point in time to other members as well. So as I said, it's just it may be within another council body that there might be somebody within the council members besides the mayor and deputy mayor who would like to attend.
And if I might clarify too, that it is would only be up to 4 total out of council, so it would not be close to a committee of the whole, which is 9. Okay. All right. So are there any other questions specific to the amendment? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And then we'll vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And I will pass the chair back to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much for taking the chair. We'll move on to item 10, which is staff reports, and there are none. Item 11 is motions, and also there are none. Under item 12, under bylaws, 12.1 is the Connecting Links Program Contribution Agreement. That bylaw number 2023-072 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the Connecting Links Program Contribution Agreement between His Majesty the King in the Right of Ontario and the Corporation of the Town of Collingwood for the purpose of rehabilitation of Highway 26 from Osier Bluff Road to Cranberry Trail West be enacted and passed this 11th day of September 2023. And I have a mover, Councillor Potts, and a seconder, Councillor Perry. And any discussion? I will call the matter to vote then. All those in favor, and that is unanimous. Moving on to 12.2, procedural bylaw amendment regarding ex officio members on advisory committees. And this is required after passing the other. that bylaw number 2023-073, being a bylaw to amend the procedural bylaw to allow for members to participate in advisory committee meeting on an ex officio capacity, be enacted and passed this 11th day of September 2023. It asks for a mover, Councillor Ring, and seconder, Councillor Doherty. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Are there any notices of motion today? Let's see any. Under the county report, I have just a couple of short items, if I may. We had a meeting on August the 8th, and one of the takeaways that is going to be discussed further, and I wanted to let council know about that, is there was a discussion about the Nottawasaga Police Services Board letter to Simcoe County District School Board trustees, where they're asking for dialogue and discussion in regards to the community liaison officers in district high schools. So I expect that I'll be bringing something as an update to council in the near future in regards to that. I also wanted to just briefly note that tomorrow's agenda includes an update of the most recent steps to establish agreements with Circular Materials Ontario. And they're the producers organization that is setting up their collection system. As we all know, it turns to a producer requirement in 2024. And it appears that there should be little change over the next year or so, but by 2026, the county may not be responsible for curbside recycling collection. So it's something that needs to be monitored closely because of the needs of our community. And I intend on making sure that council is fully aware of what's being proposed at the county level because of the impact here locally. And then, as always, councillors know that there's a portal that they can use to link to any news. So I'll ask if there's any questions about that. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. With respect to the police presence in the high schools, with respect to that portfolio, the Collingwood Police Services Board is doing a lot of work in that regard. And I think I would ask that you connect with our chair, Claire Tucker-Reid, and or the CAO with respect to Collingwood's perspective in terms of pursuing to make sure everyone's on the same page.
At this stage, I wasn't intending on pursuing anything. It was just that they had Nottawasaga Police Service Board had sent that letter.
Yep.
And I was just more or less informing everyone that we talked about it on August the 8th, but I don't have any intention at this point in time of pursuing anything. I had remembered that we'd been updated periodically by yourself and Mayor Hamlin as our reps on the board, that things were being discussed. So.
Okay, thank you. That's just when you said you were going to bring something further to report on it. I thought that was you were uptaking on an action item of some kind.
No, that's quite all right. I was only if I hear something at the county, and it would just be bringing information to the council. That's the intention. Great. We'll move on to the consent agenda. That council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further that information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are that of the authors and not verified or approved as being correct. 15.1, National Day of Service, September 11th, 2023. 15.2, National Coaches Week, September 16th to 24th, 2023. 15.3, Letter regarding Auditor General Report on Greenbelt Process. 15.4, Request for Endorsement, Niagara Escarpment Biosphere. 15.5, Letter from the Honorable David Piscini, Minister of the Environment regarding litter. I'd ask for a mover and a seconder to put those on the table, Councillor Baines and Councillor Doherty, and I'll ask if anyone would like to pull one for discussion. Don't see anything, so I will ask for a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And we'll move into council business and older deferred business. There's none listed. Under other business, I believe that we're going to receive the 6th Street Road reconstruction update. And I believe it will be Director Slama that will be speaking with us, and probably her and some of her staff. So you go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to all of council and members of the public who are listening and watching today. So our Manager of Engineering, Stuart West, is online today, and he will be going over a presentation for council and the public that outlines what is being proposed for the road reconstruction on 6th Street. So without, in an effort to not duplicate things that Mr. Manager West will be repeating, I'll hand it over to Manager West.
Okay, and Manager West, I believe, will be up on our screen there. I'm just getting used to which screen I'm looking at. So you go right ahead, Manager West. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm just hoping that my microphone is working okay since I'm joining online. Can everyone? I'm getting the thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of council. Thank you, Director Slama, for the introduction. As she said, I'm here to provide a operational update on the 6th Street water main replacement project and provide some additional information for everybody in terms of where we're at and what decisions have been made to date so far. So next slide, please. So this slide just provides a brief overview of the project. It was initiated as part of our asset management needs. From a technical perspective, there were lots of factors that were raised on the project and what some of the top priorities are. This includes everything from asset management replacements of our undersized and deteriorated water main. Same thing with the sanitary and storm infrastructure on 6th Street. There is a transmission water main that's required to improve water supply to the west end of Collingwood. It also will include reinstallation of curb and gutter to improve and maintain the current drainage systems. Also improvements to the active transportation facilities and improvements to road safety considerations as well. The project is going to be funded through the development charge reserves, and the transmission water main on 6th Street is a project that was identified in the DC study. I also just want to note at this time that our project manager Latimer, is also on the line, and as well as our engineering consultants as well, and they can be available after the presentation for any other additional questions. So once we started, next slide, please. So once staff started initiating the project, we saw that there was a number of opportunities and as well as reviewing kind of all the opportunities for the entire community. When we look back at our community-based strategic plan as a guiding document, staff and the engineering team, design team, consultants looked at our vision, and we considered that in hand with our technical considerations as well, and just wanted to think about what sort of opportunities could be realized. Really, we just want to ensure that the design promotes and encourages a healthy lifestyle. We want to get people outside, enjoying the trees, walking and biking, as well as driving. We want to make sure that there's improved safety for all residents and all of our infrastructure components. So meaning that there's securing potable water resources, we're improving drainage, we're keeping our most vulnerable users in mind, such as pedestrians and cyclists, and looking at what other options we have in terms of even changing driver behavior and needs with, but balancing that need with making sure that traffic and transportation can get across Collingwood as well. The design is going to be inclusive and respecting our diversity in Collingwood and demographics, noting that it'll make sure that all modes of transportation are accommodated for. Not everybody has the option to leave a car behind all year round in Collingwood. Lots of snow that we're competing with. and making sure that we're also supporting our local businesses so they can continue to provide our residents with services and jobs that we need. 6th Street is a major east-west corridor, and it is a preferred route for large trucks connections, and we have bus routes along 6th Street as well. So then we just go through some more as well, ensuring that our design is progressive. We're protecting and improving upon the trail and pedestrian facilities, and keeping a vibrant community and a healthy natural environment as well. And again, just noting that we're an all seasons community as well. So we're protecting against frozen water, dealing with more frequent intense rain, managing snow, and making sure that we meet standards for surface conditions of the road in all seasons. Next slide, please. So when we started reviewing the 6th Street cross section, this you can have see an example here of what's on 6th Street today. There's two 3.3 meter wide vehicular lanes, two 1.5 meter bike lanes on the road, and a 1.5 meter sidewalk on the north side of the street as well. We ensured that we were reviewing the town engineering standards, the official plan, the 2019 council endorsed cycling plan, adopted by council, and the recently updated Ontario Traffic Manual, Book 18, it's called, which goes over design and guidelines for cycling facilities. Just wanted to finally note that the engineering standards and on the official plan, 6th Street is designated as a collector roadway, and our standards do indicate that where possible, pedestrian facilities and pedestrian and active transportation facilities should be provided on both sides of the road where possible. Next slide, please. So 5 alternatives were considered. This is alternative 1 and 2 that's in front of you right now. Alternative 1 is essentially the do nothing option. This would leave the vehicle lanes and bike lanes on the road as you see today. The only change that would have been indicated would be adding a sidewalk to the south side of the road. This improves the pedestrian facilities with really no improvements or evolution for the cycling facility, but it does also preserve street trees on the road. Alternative 2 that we presented to the public was a multi-use trail on the south side. And this would increase the vehicle lane width slightly, which is needed considering the type of vehicles on the road, including buses and large trucks as well. And we would be moving the bike lanes off of the roadway and onto a multi-use trail. We'd maintain the sidewalk and boulevard as it is on the north side of the road, and the multi-use trail would be located on the south side of the road. So this would allow for cyclists and pedestrians to both share that corridor and be more favorable for those recreational users. We'd also require some additional buffering from the multi-use trail, which would increase the width of the multi-use trail. And it would also require minimal to very little changes with any utilities, and would not require a removal of the mature trees that are located on the north side of 6th Street. Next slide, please. Additional alternatives were also considered prior to the public engagement. Alternative 3 and 4 also included a multi-use trail, primarily on the north side of the road. The drawback with this, the main drawback, is that it would require removal of many of the mature trees on 6th Street, which is one of the primary reasons that we did not present that to the public as an alternative. And a cycle track alternative was also considered as well prior to public engagement. The cycle track is essentially a separate facility from the sidewalk that would be located on top of the curbs rather than the bike lanes being within the roadway that you see today. That they would have a physical barrier, a curb, separating the road and the cyclists on the shoulder of the road. So the positives of this is obviously that cyclists have their own facility, pedestrians have their own facility, and vehicles have their own facility that everyone can use. But some of the challenges that we saw with this is just, again, additional width required, would require removal of some trees along 6th Street, some of the larger mature trees. We'd require additional pedestrian bridges crossing the Oak Street Canal. And additionally, quite a bit of utility relocation of the hydro poles and additional utilities that are located along 6th Street, excuse me. So alternative 5 would, in essence, be pretty typical of doubling the estimated budget when comparing to the other alternatives that were presented. Next slide, please. So this provides the preferred solution that was presented for 6th Street. The tree canopy being maintained on the north side of the roadway, a larger pedestrian and cycling facility on the south side of the roadway. The sidewalk and multi-use trails would be continuous through all the various private driveways that are located along 6th Street. And this would indicate to the vehicles and pedestrians that pedestrians and cyclists would have the right of way when they're walking along the trail. So this would allow our vulnerable road users to have a wider shared facility and encourage pedestrians to use the trail rather than we've had some reports of pedestrians using the bike lanes on the roadway currently, as just right now there's no other alternative for them at this time. Next slide, please. So for consultation, notices were delivered to residents in November of last year that the project was starting. A public information session was held on May 31st, and the Engage Collingwood website also was also set up and provides residents details on the project and allow them to have any future updates that are associated with it as well. Town staff also met with members of the Trails and Active Transportation Committee as well to discuss the project. I just want to take this time right now to also just clarify that in terms of the municipal class EA process, this 6th Street project is a Schedule A+ project within the class EA, which essentially just means that the town, if it wanted to, could go straight to detailed design. Public engagement was offered and we felt was necessary at this point because it was proposing I guess an abrupt change from what we see today on 6th Street, but again with good engineering practices and reasons behind it. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of what we heard during the consultation, noting that the urban tree canopy is consistently brought up with as a priority of council and the public, and that efforts that are going to be made to maintain these street trees. And if that's not possible in some areas or some locations, that town staff will ensure that we budget for replacements of those street trees as well. There's also a number of drainage concerns that were noted on private property, and these have been noted and addressed and will be addressed during detailed design of the roadway. Street lighting was also raised as a concern, and analysis will also be completed during detailed design. And just noting that all street lights will be LED and also dark sky compliant when they're implemented as well. A variety of road safety recommendations were also received, mainly focusing on vehicle speeds that are seen out there, active transportation options for all modes of transportation. Some highlights that we do want to include for you today will be formalizing a pedestrian crossing at the Spruce Street and 6th Street intersection. Currently, there is a school crossing at this location. However, it'll be formalized as it's called a PXO, a pedestrian crossing. And staff and the design consultants will also be looking at improved line painting, signage, and crosswalk markings at all the other intersections as well. And finally, the other main concern that was heard was conflicts between the vulnerable users was raised, noting that when you have a two-way multi-use trail, you're mixing together pedestrians, cyclists, and along the driveways with 6th Street as well. That was noted as a concern that those conflicts couldn't be manageable, and we'll be discussing that further on the next couple slides. Next slide, please. So hearing those concerns, we initiated additional pedestrian and cyclist traffic counts in June. They were done at the intersections of 6th Street and Maple and 6th Street and Spruce. My apologies. This was done between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. To ensure we got the rush hour pedestrian volumes, and was also done while school was still in session before the summer break. Next slide, please. So this is at 6th and Maple. You can see that pedestrians were the majority of users that were noted on the road. There's a total of 136 people counted for the entire day. That includes both cyclists and pedestrians. Next slide, please. Similarly, at 6th and Spruce, cyclists actually made up the majority of users in this case. The majority of the users, my apologies, they were the majority of users on the road, and there's a total of 160 users for the entire day. Next slide, please. So the Ontario traffic manuals have guidelines of when it's necessary to separate pedestrians and cyclists. And it really depends on whether pedestrians are more than or less than 20% of all your users on the road. It then goes on to state that depending on those number of users, the width of your path or your facility will dictate if that's large enough to contain all of those users that you would see in a peak hour situation. So in summary, it's quite a bit of words here, but just to try to clarify that, in summary, pedestrians in both cases at both intersections were greater than 20% of all the users, but the counts that we saw were well below the 100 users per hour. So we were seeing a little over 100 people and cyclists per day, but the ranges that we should see when it recommends to separate them should be per hour, 100 users per hour. And so we're still well below that sort of threshold. So based on that guideline, it wouldn't be necessary or excuse me, wouldn't be required to separate pedestrians and cyclists based on that OTM guideline. Next slide, please. So this is the nomograph that's located within the Ontario traffic manuals as well, of determining which appropriate facility should be used on roadways. When looking at this, we can see that for 6th Street, we have traffic in the range of 7,000 to 8,000 vehicles per day. And regardless of, and once we get into that kind of range, regardless of the posted speed limit, we should be encouraging a physically separated active transportation alternative for those users. So this could mean anything from a multi-use path to cycle tracks or other options for physically separated bike lanes. And just noting on the side as well, the 2012 and 2019 transportation updates to council indicated that traffic will continue to increase along 6th Street. So leaving bike lanes on the roadway as they are today would not be the preferred alternative based on this guideline alone. Next slide, please. This is table 5.3 within the Ontario traffic manuals. It also provides further narrowing down of those various alternatives. And they're more so based on the typical roadway characteristics that you would see on depending on the type of road that we're looking at. So in summary, this only provides a short little snippet of table 5.3, but based on the criteria that we have listed here, a speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, 8,000 vehicles per day, it's designated a collector road, buses, pedestrians, are on 6th Street, but relatively low comparatively. And although there are quite a few residential driveways that front onto 6th Street, they're considered low volume. So meaning that there's few cars that are entering and exiting. So considering all the various criteria that are within the OTM table 5.3, a multi-use trail is appropriate for the context. Next slide, please. Finally, just going through some examples of multi-use trails across the province of Ontario, honestly. So Mapleview Drive might be looked at as, well, why are we showing this as an option? I just wanted to describe that even on busier roadways, I felt that Mapleview Drive was still another option that we should be looking at. There still are driveways that enter and exit onto Mapleview Drive that are west of ESSA. And here we're seeing a bit more of a residential and commercial kind of mix of land uses that are there fronting Mapleview. Lake Margaret Trail in St. Thomas is another example. There's actually a trail that extends through kind of a nice picturesque kind of view of Lake Margaret in St. Thomas. And it also continues through residential neighborhoods and allows those users within those residential neighborhoods to get onto the park trail system from their front door. Next slide, please. And finally, just as a more recent one that's still under the design process, hasn't been implemented yet. In 2021, the city of Thorold completed a municipal class EA of St. David Street and Town Line Road West. That's right along the border of St. Catharines. The purpose of the EA was also to extend the roadway. So that's why I guess staff here in the town of Collingwood did not go through the full EA process, and excuse me, the Schedule C process for an EA. In this case, they would also be, the city of Thorold would also be extending the roadway connecting to Front Street North, which is another major thoroughfare. St. David Street is lower traffic counts than 6th Street in Collingwood today, but due to that extension of the roadway, they are expecting traffic levels to increase. The city of Thorold is also similarly sized to Collingwood, and St. David's Road similarly also has many driveways fronting the road and several local roadways also intersecting 6th Street as well. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up, the multi-use trail is still the preferred alternative that staff will now be directing our engineering consultant to proceed with into detailed design. It aligns with the town standards for providing pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roadway, noting that 6th Street is a collector road. It follows good engineering judgment and the Ontario Traffic Manual's criteria for selecting an active transportation route. It maintains the active transportation route noted within the 2019 council-approved cycle plan, maintains trees and minimizes costly utility relocations, and also minimizes impacts to the existing residents on 6th Street, considering many of them have private landscaping and minimally reduces their driveway length on the south side of 6th Street as well. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So hopefully that was informative, and myself and the engineering consultants, Tatham Engineering, as well as project manager Latimer, are available for any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Manager West. That was a very detailed update for us, and I know from the questions I was getting at the farmers market over the summer, it's very much a topic in the minds of the residents. So I'm going to ask Director Salama if she had anything additionally she'd like to add.
Thank you, Chair. I think Manager West did an excellent job of summarizing all the different facets that staff are looking at when we consider these road reconstruction projects, right? So it is important to, always keep in mind and remember what initiated the project. So in our case, it was an asset management component, but as Manager West said, we are always trying to keep in mind of, how do we incorporate other aspects that are important to our community when we look at these road reconstructions. And we are always limited in the right of way that exists. So we are constantly trying to balance a lot of the elements, and we tried to give an explanation of that through our connection with the strategic plan. So, again, looking at that balance between protecting our most vulnerable users, improving our infrastructure, maintaining our tree canopy, and also being accountable with respect to costs and sustainability in the long term. So thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
And again, council thanks staff for the update because it is very detailed, and as you move into this next stage of final design, it's important that the public know that the considerations that have been taken into account that you've talked about. So I'll just ask if there's anybody that would like to speak in regards to Councillor Baines. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Manager West. Having ridden for years on 6th, both eastbound and westbound, if I'm on the north side of 6th and I want to go west to, say, the 10th line or whatever, as I understand it, I will have to cross both lanes of traffic to get to the trail on the south side. Is that correct? To ride on that cycle trail on the south side to go westbound?
To go westbound. So if you were, my apologies, Councillor Baines, would you be living between High Street and here Ontario Street on 6th?
Yes. I'm essentially Maple or Birch Street. So
in that case, that is correct. You would have to travel westbound and if you're on a bicycle, you would have to travel westbound on the south side of 6th Street. The staff are looking at improvements to the intersection of High and 6th as well, to be determined at this point if that would be included in the 6th Street reconstruction scope. However, yes, the multi-use trail would have to connect to the multi-use trail on the west side of High Street, so crossing the road of High and then crossing north across 6th Street West, and then traveling west on that trail, leading it to the west end of Collingwood.
So that will be a learning process for all cyclists, not to use the roadway, but to use the cycle pathway on the south side.
Correct. That is correct. Although right now the way the roadway is set up as well is that if you're likewise traveling eastbound on the trail that is located west of High Street, you'll have to then cross High Street and then again cross the road again to get onto the bike lanes traveling east on 6th Street as well. So excellent point that there does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect between that trail connectivity, and that'll be something that we do want to look at moving forward as we keep going through the detailed design process.
Right, and it might be a challenge for cyclists essentially jaywalking across 6th to get to the bicycle trail on the south side. But anyway, it's a necessary compromise, I think. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, the multi-use pathway will be two-way, pedestrian and cycle.
On
the one side, yeah.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. So one of the concerns that was expressed at the public meeting was that that design introduces the possibility of conflicts because when drivers are crossing over that path, they are accustomed to just looking in one direction. They are not going to be anticipating that a cyclist could be coming from the opposite direction. So if we were to move ahead with this design, what mitigating steps could we take? I am thinking of some options relative to the treatment of the crosswalk, that it would be elevated or otherwise physically demarcated from the rest of the road. So at least the driver would be more likely to stop and look both ways. Is that a consideration right now?
Through the chair, and I may also ask that Project Manager Latimer also turn his camera on as well if there's anything else to add. However, yes, the multi-use trail is proposed to be line painted as well. So there will be additional demarcations on the trail itself. So if if a car were, I think the example the councilor's providing right now is to when residents are turning into their driveways, they may not be aware of having bikes approaching from both the east and west directions. That is correct. That is something that would certainly be a risk. However, the multi-use trail will be at the same elevation as the barrier curb. So vehicles entering the driveway would have to, like you would a driveway or driving over a curb, have to go over that curb bump as well before they're entering into their private property entrance. And there will also be line painting provided on the multi-use trail as well, a yellow line and a white line, indicating that there needs to be some setback and additional setbacks from the barrier curb as well. Project Manager Latimer, did you have anything else to add to that statement?
I think just in regards to the raised crossings, there are just concerns with, there could be concerns with the snowplow operations in the winter and drainage concerns raising those intersections up off the side streets.
Follow up, yes.
Thank you. Not to be overly argumentative, but many municipalities are putting in elevated crosswalks. They are putting permanent speed bumps throughout the community as traffic calming. And their snowplow equipment seem to be operating just fine. So I wonder what they're doing that we're not doing, that we feel that our snow plowing equipment could not handle permanent safety enhancements.
Through the chair, if I may, raised crosswalks are certainly something that are preferable for pedestrians and cyclists alike. They do also introduce additional challenges that are beyond just snow clearing as well, including drainage and blocking overland flow routes essentially from some of those local side roads that we'd see on 6th Street. So again, I think what we're trying to say is that the multi-use trail will be consistent through private property entrances, where the trail intersects with a local road that's municipally owned, where that road provides more than just a crossing for pedestrians. It provides again local residents traveling on the roadway as well, and also drainage from those upstream drainage boundaries as well. When we start introducing barriers essentially through those local roadways, we start backing up stormwater in major events and potentially impacting flooding upstream areas of that raised crossing as well. So again, it's not that it's impossible. Nothing is certainly impossible. It's just that we're going to need to consult more with our public works staff, operational staff, and our design team as well to just see if that is a feasible alternative that we can provide for those crossings on 6th Street. However, we will be following the Ontario Traffic Manual guidelines for, they're called cross-ride intersections. So physically line painting and marking the intersections that both cyclists and pedestrians can use those intersections, and they're better marked for vehicles to note that they should expect both pedestrians and cyclists at the same time as well.
If I may, I believe Director Slama wanted to add something to that.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I wanted to comment on a couple of items that Councillor Baines mentioned, so we could wrap up this item if you wish first.
Thank you. Well, go ahead. Did you have any further? All right.
No, just to say generally, I for one am not satisfied with this design. It makes no sense to me that we are building to traffic volumes today. We probably won't have an opportunity like this one on 6th Street to build for the future for the next 25 or 30 years. And at that point in time, we're going to have much more vehicular volume and much more cyclist and pedestrian volume. So why not build it for tomorrow? That's just generally where I think it's a concern of mine anyway.
And certainly it's being recorded, and as we go through the process, it'll be part of the discussion. I believe Councillor Jeffrey wanted to speak.
I do. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, but I think that Manager West had something to add to that point. I saw his hand raised in the video.
Sorry for missing that. Manager West, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I just wanted to note that absolutely staff are looking at traffic volumes in the future as well. And also noting that, yes, pedestrian and cyclist counts will increase as well through the future. However, so I just wanted to add that clarity that we are accommodating and anticipating a increase in level of traffic on 6th Street. But thank you very much.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. So my question, based on Councillor Doherty's questions, would be that this experience with the multi-use trail on 6th would be similar to that of the multi-use trail all along 1st Street. So rather than commercial properties, it would be residential. So people had to learn on 1st Street, pulling out of all of those commercial businesses and Sobeys, that you have to look both ways before entering onto a much higher volume and more lanes of traffic. Am I correct in that assumption that this is just similar to what we're doing on 1st Street, only we're doing it on 6th?
Go ahead, Manager West.
Thank you. Through the chair, this would be a very similar application, absolutely. I think I just want to note that the difference between 1st Street and 6th Street, as you've already indicated, is I guess a difference in land use, where there might be also many commercial access driveways that are located on 1st. 1st Street also has considerably more traffic than 6th Street as well in terms of number of vehicles per day. But again, having said that, very similar application, and instead of the concrete sidewalk, concrete multi-use path that you see on 1st Street, staff I think would be recommending a asphalt multi-use trail, which can be easily more easily line painted and maintained to show I guess that shared or split kind of use down the center of the multi-use trail as well.
Follow up.
Thank you. So follow up specific to those comments in terms of heating up our community and asphalt versus pavement. I think there's a conversation to be had there in terms of weighing off those benefits. I don't know how much more. I do know that on the 1st Street out by the Secret Trail, staff had preferred to go to concrete for the snow clearing, I believe, as opposed to the paving. But if we do ever consider concrete, I really hope that we will consider the concrete that reduces 50% less GHGs. So I hope we put that all into those decisions that we're making on this major project. Thank you.
And again, I'm sure that would be duly noted that you've put forward. Councillor Ring.
Excuse me. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Manager West. The topic that was Councillor Doherty just brought up with the multi-use trail on the south side of 6th Street. There's never been a sidewalk or anything along that route. I'm sure that we have considered residential parking. Are we going to have the residents that are there used to as much parking as they had in their laneway to still have enough for a second vehicle without blocking the trail?
Go ahead, Manager West.
Thank you. Through the chair, the multi-use trail option, because the bike lanes would be removed from the roadway, we're able to shrink the width of 6th Street considerably. So there would be a slight reduction to the driveway lengths for the south side of 6th Street residents. However, the other alternatives that were presented and considered would have quite a bit more disruption to the front yards of those residents on 6th Street. So in terms of which option presents the least amount of disruption and use of driveway space and the amount of cars they can park in their private driveways, then yes, the preferred solution is the least impactful on driveway capacity, I guess, for those residents. And apologies, I just wanted to also add that currently 6th Street is I believe bylawed and signed with no parking currently on both sides of the road, and staff would be proposing that to remain, I guess, as a no parking along 6th Street.
That's actually one of the points I was going to make. I know that that's not the parking I'm talking about. I'm talking about vehicles one in front of the other one and not on the street. And just from the previous, from the May meeting at the library, the public consultation meeting, so really nothing's really changed from what you recommended at that time, and you give the explanation today on why, and you showed the data of bicycle and pedestrian traffic probably not heavy enough to warrant that. And you have said that in answering Councillor Doherty's concern was you are looking to the future. I thought you basically were giving the example we're going to build to the data you've just collected, which wouldn't to me say you're going to you've added any additional data that would say that the traffic's going to be a lot heavier.
Oh, I understand. Okay. Through the chair, I think really what we're trying to highlight is that 6th Street today has approximately 8,000 vehicles per day on it. By 2040, our previous transportation study update indicated that 6th Street would be approximately 10,000 vehicles per day. Although I don't so again, going back to the slide indicating that my apologies, is the nomograph within the Ontario Traffic Manual. So really what that slide indicates is that when you have levels of traffic that are in that range between 8,000 and 10,000 vehicles per day, we're looking to the future in the sense that bike lanes are not the preferred alternative today. So leaving them there, I suppose, would not be the looking to the future and ensuring that we have those active transportation options available to residents. We would be pushing for a separated facility, which is exactly what we're doing. We're pushing for a trail that is off the road that allows pedestrians and cyclists to have not be right beside cars, and that many cars is again better to be separated from with a barrier curb between them.
Well, just one last follow-up, and this is on a different topic. I agree that there should be some type of a hard surface trail there. It's easier to maintain and stands up better. The reason we're proposing asphalt over concrete, is it just a cost thing?
Through the chair, I think both alternatives definitely could be considered. I think the reason we're proposing asphalt, at least from my perspective, at least right now, is to delineation for those different types of users, I guess, using that trail. We have had a lot of requests from the Trails and Active Transportation Committee to start providing additional line painting on the multi-use trails that you see on 6th Street, on High Street, throughout town where we see that larger concrete facility. Although the line painting does show up on concrete, but it does have, I guess, the tendency to kind of chip away a little bit easier than asphalt does. so that line painting does adhere to the asphalt sometimes better with an asphalt trail. So we're really just trying to look for better ways to delineate that the surface of that asphalt trail, and yeah, I think that's essentially the answer we're trying to provide right now. So not necessarily just cost between concrete and asphalt. Concrete is slightly more expensive. You are correct, but I think both alternatives definitely can be considered for sure in the detailed design.
If I may, just one more
Yes, go right ahead.
comment on that. And yes, it will be, the initial cost will be a lot more putting concrete in over paving. There's no doubt about that. But overall maintenance, say after 10 or 15 years, everybody's that had an asphalt driveway knows how many times you have to repair your driveway. Mm-hmm. And the concrete will last probably double the life of the asphalt before you really have to do much maintenance to it. Would that not make up for the difference in price costing?
Through the chair, that's a great point. I think really we're just trying to balance the benefits and cons between providing a better facility for pedestrians and cyclists, and balancing that with our asset management plan, and then providing a sidewalk that doesn't need to be either resurfaced or my apologies. Repaved, I guess, every couple decades. So absolutely a balance, and that's something that we absolutely would take under advisement and look and do further for you.
Anything further? Okay, so Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. For what it's worth, I know concrete is more expensive. I know if anyone's ridden their bikes down at Sunset Point, the saw cut concrete, not with expansion joints, but saw cut concrete is far superior to ride on than asphalt that may be even just 2 or 3 years old. If anyone's ridden their bikes down behind the Ahwin gathering place, and the state of the asphalt down there is it's almost unrideable. But for what it's worth, like I said, my preference would be to spend the extra money and go with the saw cut concrete. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone further? A lot of great conversation. Any of the things I was thinking about has already been brought up, but that's a lot of food for thought for right now as we're going through the process. Director Slama, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to touch upon, and they relate back to a few things that Councillor Baines mentioned, which was when he was talking about, cyclists on the north side of 6 having to cross to the south side of 6 to be able to use the multi-use path, which is true. I just wanted to remind Council that cyclists who are comfortable using the road still can use the road, and so that option is always there for cyclists, but if a cyclist was going to use the multi-use path, they would have to cross, and this crossings is not unsimilar to many other crossings of streets in town, but to Councillor Baines' points, right, he was thinking, well, the cross section and the travel lanes are a little bit wider, but in actuality, we will be reducing those, right? So we're going back down to the 3.5. So the lanes will look right like a local road when it comes to the traveled the vehicle lane widths and the travel portion of the road, and we're also, again, trying to balance the fact that today there is no pedestrian facility on the south side. So what we do know is that some people are having to cross 6th Street, which again is wider today, to be able to access the sidewalk on the south side. So really great conversation today. We appreciate all the comments, and just wanted to say those few because this is
a few of the things that we are trying to balance, again, when we look at these road reconstructions. So thank you for letting me speak again, Chair.
Thank you again to you and your staff for the excellent presentation and getting it out to the public. Now they can see what's being considered, and through our community, the whole process, there's always the public's ability to speak to council in regards to it. So that's been a great update. Is there any other business that anybody had to bring up? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just further to the deputation today, I guess my question through to the CAO would be, what would be a normal period of time to review the whistleblower policy? It was 2021. We've heard maybe some good advice today. So when would that be able to come up?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Jeffrey, I would think that maybe 2 years would be reasonable. That would be sometime this year. It hasn't been on our plan. And looking at the, actually the clerk has a role in this as well as Executive Director Peg. I think it would be reasonable to add to our work plan for 2024. It's certainly a very important policy for which a review would be prudent.
Thank you for that. So would that require anything formal from me at this point as to make a notice of motion to add it to that work plan, or is that something staff can take just on the discussion?
I would be happy to add that to the 2024 work plan as a normal course of business, as something that we should be doing in any case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other business? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering, seeing as we are on the subject of new road reconstruction, if Director Salama could give us an update as to what is happening with Maple Street and what changes and improvements we might anticipate when it's completed.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure that's not on the committee of the whole agenda as an update, right? Yeah. So, Director Salama, are you okay with providing a little information?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you. So through you to Councillor Doherty and the rest of council, Maple Street, a section of Maple Street between 8th and Cameron Street is being reconstructed as part of the 9th Street sanitary sewer and water main replacement project that was happening this year. Also, as part of that construction project, we retained the general contractor to complete the works that were identified through our review of the Maple Street Bike Priority Project. And so that was the implementation of shared lanes for cars and cyclists, so sharrows, the installation of sharrows on the road, the demarcation of that on the road, and the installation of some signage to help identify that for users. The works that are happening in particular on Maple Street between 8th and Cameron. So a part of that work is urbanizing the cross section. So we are seeing that we're having traveled lanes of 3.5 meters. There's the installation of curb and gutters as part of the storm sewer works. And again, as I said, sanitary sewer and water main replacement. And also there's maintaining the sidewalk facilities that were in the boulevard. So we're not essentially changing the width of the traveled lanes on Maple, but it will look different because there, with the addition of the curb and those blocks, it will look different. But we are basically matching what exists today. We're just putting it in an urbanized cross section.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As we embarked on that project, the warrants indicated that based on average speed of vehicles, that the speed limit should be reduced to 40 kilometers an hour. And as we now have or will soon have a nice, smooth, urbanized, straight runway that if experience holds any water, then we could probably anticipate increased speeds on Maple Street instead of decreased speed. Just wanted to confirm whether or not the speed limit is going to be reduced to 40 kilometers an hour.
Go ahead, Director Solomon.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Doherty. At the current time, staff are not proposing a change to the speed limit on Maple Street, but I will remind council that we are in the process of doing a speed study and that we're going to see that information. So we're doing a speed study of the entire town. And depending on what we find in that study, we'll determine whether we move ahead with any recommended changes prior to the completion of the transportation master plan, or whether, based on what we see, if some of the potential changes or recommended changes get incorporated through the transportation master plan. But I would say that that speed study is the right mechanism for us to look at the speeds, not just on Maple, but on some other streets throughout the community as well.
Can you remind us just when you think you'll have that be able to come forward?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have a consultant that has been doing a majority of the work related to the study this summer. So we are anticipating a draft of the information from the consultant this fall.
Thank you. A follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
Yes, thank you. So, within our work plan as we have it now, should we see some changes in the number of vehicles that are exceeding the speed limit on Maple Street when it's completed, can we respond quickly and nimbly and install some traffic calming mechanisms as we have done in front of our schools? Also at Cameron Street, of course, Maple Street is very close to two schools, Cameron Street School and CCI. Through you to the director.
Go ahead, Director Song.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Doherty. So again, the cross-section that we are implementing on Maple Street is the same as on 9th, which is our engineering standard. So it does match our engineering standard, and it matches what we have implemented when we've done a variety of these infrastructure replacement projects. So that would include Niagara Street and Simcoe Street, 7th Street and 8th Street, etc. So we are matching the cross section that is our standard. But in saying that, another project that in our operational plan for this year is the review of our engineering standards. So part of that review will be looking at, is this a standard that we want to remain for our local roads, or in general, looking at all of our cross section standards and how they might change for the different types of road, arterial, collector, local road, and whether it's in a residential area or commercial area. So, something like lane width is something that we can look at in that review. Also through the transportation master plan, that we are initiating this year, we will be doing a review of a complete streets policy. So that is something else that might in turn, by the end of the transportation master plan, might see us adapt something different for our standards, because our standards are adaptable, right? We haven't updated them in quite a while, but going forward, we hope to do it more frequently. And I think I had something else to say, but I've lost my train of thought.
Okay. Councillor Doherty, is that okay?
Yes, thank you. I just, we have such a call from our community to reduce our speeds of traffic and to enhance safety all throughout the community that I do hope that we are going to give serious consideration to a townwide reduction of speed to 40 kilometers an hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Potts.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Fryer. While we're on the topic of the Maple Street reconstruction, the one concern that I have and the concern that I've received quite a bit from the public is the taking away of the boulevard parking. And I think in previous council there was talk about the boulevard beautification, but I really think in this sense we've handcuffed the existing residents now that have been there for multiple years that really don't have the parking space right back for when the houses were constructed, probably in the 50s. So I think it's really put an extra burden on the residents. And I think moving forward, I don't know if there's a potential currently of an exemption of trying to put something into place that maybe can accommodate and help them. And then in future, realizing that it is a significant issue and that really, when you get something taken away and now you've only got, say, one parking space and you have, say, two vehicles, that is a concern. And I think if there's something we can do, I know in the past there's been, if you look at some of our older streets in town where there's been, pavements and screening pads put in front of properties to help accommodate that. In this case here, is we try to accommodate everything. I think it still is something that of interest to the public to make sure that it's implemented, and because as of right now, it's really put them in a bad position. So I just wanted to make note of that, and that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay. And certainly duly noted. Director Solomon, did you want to add anything to that, or?
Yes, if I may, Chair, thank you for the opportunity. So thank you, Councillor Potts, for those comments. Boulevard beautification is something that was identified by the previous council as something that they wanted staff to look into and a priority, and it is an item on our operational plan. We have drafted some proposed changes to our road occupancy bylaw, which has not yet come forward to council, but we are hoping that we can bring it forward to council before the end of the year. And so right now, while I would say we don't have the means to prohibit parking on the boulevard, we have drafted some clauses that look at the opportunities of where we would allow those exemptions and how we would deal with those kind of requests. So this is something that will come forward to council, and council will have an opportunity to speak to it on behalf of the public.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Just a quick follow-up through you, Chair. And I appreciate the response from Director Salema. Moving forward, it could probably assist the future, but with the existing issues that we're facing today with construction, and I understand curbs have been poured, but is there, and I'm looking for direction potentially from the clerk or the CAO, is there something that we can look at sooner than later, really, for the residents that are affected now before we complete construction, and go from there? I really feel and I see the concern, and really they are handcuffed, and I would rather prevent further problems now before we complete it.
I think I'll maybe turn that to CAO Skinner, if you could add some comment.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Potts. This is not a unique situation, but it is one that is somewhat limited in town, and that situation has come up a little bit previously, which is someone who's lived in their house for a long time that has historically parked on the road in front of their house. And they're asking to continue to have that parking spot reserved for them on the town's right of way. And in this case, I haven't looked at the details of this particular design, but what they would like to happen is that they would park I think several vehicles continue in the future on the right of way. So I would have to take that away and look at the actual details of this particular design, and it is quite far along. And I can commit to do so with the director and the manager.
Is that okay?
Yeah, just a quick thank you, CAO Skinner. I'll just note these discussions were started months ago, before construction. So I just want to make note that the concerns were brought forward, and we were looking for some sort of resolution or some sort of area where we could have rectified before we got to this point. So I'll just leave that as my comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments in regards to Maple Street? Okay, I'm going to recognize that Mayor Hamlin was able to come in as we were going through our updates. That update was obviously of Maple Street. We had an earlier update about 6th Street as well, and some good conversation from those. So I'm glad you could attend with us. I'm sure the last few minutes have been the first time you've sat down and not been worried about something or hustling about something. So I just wondered if there's any comment you would like to make, or are you just ready for us to proceed?
Do you mean on 6th Street or just generally?
Just in case.
Okay, yeah. Well, no, I have nothing to say on 6th Street. I did listen to it, but thank you for indulgence in recognizing my late attendance here today. My husband was discharged from the hospital today. This is like hooray news because after having a heart attack and open heart surgery, it's good to get him back. So, and maybe this is a good time to give a shout out to our local Collingwood hospital, who I really think saved his life. And of course, had to end up in a hospital closer to the city for the open heart surgery, but just great news all around. So thank you for acknowledging it.
Well, and thank you. I wasn't was uneasy about adding anything other than that unexpectedly you had to send your regrets. And I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody, but certainly we're thrilled that things have gone okay. Because as you said, there was some concern about that part of it. So that's great. Any other business that anyone had to mention? The one item I had, just a short one, but I wanted to update, and I'm kind of doing this on behalf of Councillor Doherty and Councillor Ring as members of the Affordable Housing Task Force. I just thought I'd give a quick, brief update, public update, because Council's seen some information on the affordable housing work that's continued at full tilt over the last 5 weeks. We had a very important, successful public meeting on August the 15th that included presentation of the draft master plan and receiving valuable input from many interested parties. There is the video recording of it on the Engage site for anyone who wants to review the discussions. I also want to note about on Engage is some upcoming engagement sessions. So Saturday, September the 23rd, the Caldwells are holding a seminar, Unlocking Potential, Creating Accelerating Dwelling Units, ADUs in Collingwood. And the task force really appreciates their efforts in that regard. It's something that we feel will be of assistance in getting our message about ADUs out into the public. We also will be back at the Farmers Market town booth on September the 30th. And so those inputs are all helping to contribute to the Affordable Housing Master Plan report, which is being finalized and coming to Council in October for our consideration. As well, the task force, of course, has continued to meet and discuss the plan, but also next steps so we can be ready to initiate whatever Council deems necessary. That may be requests for interest, similar or possibly in conjunction to what comes from Simcoe County's current undertaking. County is seeking input from private and non-profit on affordable or supportive housing solutions so they can gauge interest and incorporate into future funding decisions. The last part would just be to touch on what was provided in the water update report. And council saw some recent information reminding that there had been 33 single dwelling unit water units designated for affordable housing that the ICBL established, so now technically terminates because the ICBL is out, but staff are continuing to identify those 33. And as noted in the report, there's the hydraulic capacity report coming to us on September the 25th. And there's going to be the ability for us to discuss in more detail about water allocations in regards to affordable housing. So I just wanted to touch on all those types of things. And this is something I'll turn to Director Valentine in case she wanted to add anything. It's a little, it's not no forewarning or anything like that, but I just thought it was important to update council. And as I said, council had seen a lot of it, but by updating council, we're updating the public as well. So I just wanted to share that information. And is there any questions about anything in that regard or Mitch? CS Skinner? No? Okay. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I actually wanted to add one little bit of information that I learned myself over the last month. Director Valentine was talking about an application they were putting in related, I believe, to the accelerated ADUs, so accelerated units that people can put in at existing properties or in the yards of existing properties. And the director mentioned to me that she thinks this is potentially the first time it has happened in Ontario that we've had selected designs available, and the dedicated concierge service, so that if someone is interested in this, they can have someone to talk to bring them right through the process with designs that are ready for building permits and reasonably costed and the like. So I just thought I would add that piece as well, because it is a complement to the Affordable Housing Task Force, the council's support and the staff to get that program out the door. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And I would just say that, and that fits right with some of the thoughts that we've been putting forward about helping to accelerate the process, whether it's the ADUs or housing in general, and having some pre-approved designs that they can meet. So it's moving along very, very well. So again, any other business for anyone? Then I will read in or ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, the confirmatory. I knew I had to read in something. Confirmatory bylaw. That bylaw number 2023-074, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held September 11th, 2023, be enacted and passed this 11th day of September 2023. A mover, Councillor Potts, and seconder, Councillor Doherty. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. And move for adjournment, Councillor Jeffrey, thank you. And all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We had talked about, if we weren't too long, between 4:30 and 5, adjourning for just 10 minutes, give them a little extra time because it's the first switchover for the new system to the committee of the whole. Are you comfortable with starting in 10 minutes, or would you think we'd be better to go longer?
No, absolutely. Unless we're trying to have a 30-minute break, or are we just going on through after a 10-minute break? Okay, I think we have a short enough agenda that we can go straight through. Okay, yeah, nope, 10 minutes, that's great. Okay.
Thank you.